This Thursday is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The United Nations designated January 27th as the annual day of commemoration to honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust, because it was on that day in 1945 when the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp was liberated. More than 1 million people were murdered at that Nazi camp, including our next guest's family.
At 16, Hedy Bohm and her family were deported from Romania to Auschwitz, where she was ultimately separated from her parents, never to see them again. Hedy had to work in an ammunition factory until she was liberated by American forces in April 1945. 2 years later, she was married. In August 1948, the couple arrived here in Toronto. Hedy has called Toronto home ever since, and we are honored to have some of her time this evening. Hedy Bohm, welcome to CP24 tonight. We appreciate you making time. You're going to be connecting with students across the world virtually to share your story and help educate them this year. What will that mean for you?
I can't tell you enough in words what it means to me. I hope and pray that speaking to the students, striking a chord in their hearts, in their soul, will make a difference. And I'm hoping to teach them to have a better sense of themselves, to believe in themselves. Power of one is my motto. How much one person can do when you're ready to be braver than you ever thought you could be.
What happened for you, Hedy, that made you want to share your story? Why is education so important to you?
Sharing my story is just part of what I hope to do, because knowledge is very good, but it's not everything. You have to touch something in the other person's heart and soul, because facts can be twisted, can be denied, can be made to look whatever other people may want them to look. All this, you're looking at what I saw when I arrived at Auschwitz the first time with my parents. Just a whole sea of barbed wire enclosures with thousands of people in the barracks. No end wherever I looked, left, right, or center. That's what I saw. I never imagined anything of the sort. Didn't know where I was. Didn't know what purpose this would serve.
And you're going to be discussing the implications of hatred, how to stand up to it. What will you tell the world, Hedy?
That is one of my messages. Not to be a person who keeps quiet and doesn't want to get involved when they see someone being bullied or hurt. And I try to tell them, you must stand up for the others. If you ever want the others to stand up for you, you cannot allow people to hurt others because they're different color, different religion, different nationality. We have to get rid of all this hate and prejudice and replace it with something much kinder if we want to survive and if we want this world to survive.
Hedy, you and your husband moved to Toronto 1948. Take us back to what it was like. What was that adjustment like? And what did you guys think of Toronto when you got here?
Well, Toronto was a big city for us when we arrived. My hometown had only 100,000 population. So Toronto, even in 48, was much, much bigger. But it was a difficult place because we only had each other. No parents, no uncles, no grandparents, no cousins, no friends even. There wasn't a soul ever who ever knew me from my hometown before the war. Here, for most people, I was just a newcomer immigrant. And we had to deal with that the best we knew how. And in those days, there was no such thing as trauma counseling. We each managed to handle our own pain and suffering any way we could. And many of us, like me, just buried it. It took me over 50 years to be able to speak about it.
Wow.
And we appreciate that you are. What do you remember of your parents, Hedy?
I beg your pardon?
What do you remember of your parents?
Oh boy. I remember good times as a child. My father taking me on piggyback home when I was tired, when we were going home from Grandma. I remember good times, swimming, visiting Grandma on the countryside. And I remember the last moments and the cattle car, the last 3 days, where we were pressed against each other, standing room only, in the dark, in the stench. My last memories are very painful. The last minute or two after arrival, and they were both gone, and I was alone.
Hedy, I wonder what your response is to stories that we hear in Toronto and around the world still about anti-Semitism. How do you feel about that? And do you feel safe here in Canada?
As safe as ever. I am forever grateful for having been allowed to come here, to make my home here, to raise my family here. I think it's the best place in the world, and I was very fortunate. And about the anti-Semitism, unfortunately, it reminds me of those days before Auschwitz-Birkenau, before the ghettos. It's very, very sad that humanity, people, cannot learn from the past mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Is history repeating itself?
Unfortunately, very much so. All the anti-Semitism, all the lies, all the twisted truths that are being broadcasted as truths is just awful. In whatever we do, I don't know if it's enough. We'll never know, but I can't stop. That's the only thing I know to do, to try and reach the young generation and teach them that hate and discrimination is a terrible thing.
Hedy, you've been sharing your story for a number of years now, as you mentioned, to younger Canadians and young people around the world. What's been the most surprising part for some of these people who are hearing your story?
I had some rewarding responses from people who were helped by my story, who were themselves had losses of parents or siblings and were in difficulties. And hearing my story, they realized how fortunate they were because they still had one parent at least, they still had siblings, they had a warm home, ability to go wherever they wanted to, do whatever, to learn. And I think everything is so relative, and I try to tell my students to be aware how fortunate they are for all the things they take for granted, that millions and millions just dream about.
Well, Hedy Bohm, we do appreciate you speaking with us tonight, and we will be thinking about you throughout this week. Hopefully our viewers will be thinking about this for much longer, and we wish you all of the best. Hedy Bohm, a Holocaust survivor here in Toronto.